I want to transition a bit to more about the company and the moving forward and talk about, the EMS is plagued with too many players. We've always said, right? There's just so much
Yeah,
competition.
there are a lot of us.
Oh my God. So it's always hard to, how do you distinguish yourself, right? So what do you see as
Yeah.
IMI's kind of distinctive position in the industry?
One of the things I see at IMI when I travel, and I've been to all the sites multiple times now, is this thing about flexibility, right? And being flexible for our customers. And I think that IMI is the number 22 or 20 or 25, kind of a mid-tier player in the industry. It's tough to compete at times with companies like Foxconn and Flextronics and Jabil, these really big monolithic EMS players who tend to have great sourcing capability and can at times really compete well on delivered cost. So, where do we fit in there? And I think that our fit in a lot of cases is about flexibility, being able to move quickly. Our competition, our bigger competitors, tend to be slow. They tend to be hierarchical, and so their ability to make decisions quickly is not as great as ours is. So we can fly. So with only 3 or 4 layers in the entire organization, we can make decisions extremely quickly, and we can execute really fast. Customer says, "Hey, I need this." The customer says, "Jump," and we are jumping. So I think that's one of the things that used to differentiate the company. Maybe we got away from that a little bit in the past, 5 years. That those roots are really what I think, and this is coming from the people at the company, right? What I think we need to get back to compete. The other thing I'll say is the quality, right? The company has an excellent reputation as a zero-defect supplier. Most of that coming from the automotive side of the business. Almost 70% of our revenue is automotive.
Right.
And so we've had to deliver and create quality management systems that enable us to deliver a zero defect product. And, I'm here also to build up our industrial business, because I believe that there's many industrial companies that are looking for zero defect suppliers, especially infrastructure companies who are going to build a pump or a motor or whatever they're building, and they've got to install it and have it stay there trouble free for 30 years, right? So I really do believe that that quality emphasis that the company has and capability. A lot of people will say, well, the industrial companies don't want to pay for automotive quality. And I fundamentally disagree with that. I think that their total cost of ownership, quality is a really important aspect to that. So I think that quality is a real big differentiator for us. And I'll say lastly, it's the mechanical side, right? We having great automation teams. And by the way, we have a big team in the Philippines that designs and integrates our automation. And that's a differentiator, because where I've been in the past, almost all of the automation has been designed and executed by outside vendors, right? So in this case, we can choose, depending on the customer and how important that customer is to us, we can choose a customer and say, hey, we're going to build out your back end line in 10 weeks. And it's going to be delivered, validated, and ready to run production, right? So in terms of time to market and being able to hit quality and cost levels from the value add side, I think that automation capability we have and our ability to handle the things like plastics and metals and get those tooling lead times down because we own it, right? I think that's a real differentiator that some of our customers really appreciate. Now it's about bringing that back for customers, right? It's telling them, look, we can build tooling for plastics in 6 to 8 weeks. It doesn't have to be 10 to 12 to 14 weeks. When a customer has a need, we have to be there and be ready to respond and say yes. The old Four Seasons moniker, which is, never say no to a customer,
Yeah.
always find a way to yes. And that's for our important accounts, our biggest customers, our most important customers. That's something we do that I think, other EMS companies, tend to be a little more structured, let's say.
Mhm.
And that can be difficult for customers to try to work their way through.
Yeah. There, two themes you've touched on there. I want to kind of tease out a bit, and you keep talking about the customer. So about the, you know, the competition. We talked about all of the number of EMS, so it's always been a highly competitive. But at the same time, a lot of OEM relationships tend to be very sticky if you're performing well, right? Do you
Yes.
see that's changing? How is that? I mean, and it's different at different levels, I'm sure, right? At the tier 1 versus the tier 4, but how do you view that, and how is that evolving in the industry?
You mean basically customer loyalty?
Yeah,
Like,
right.
are customers loyal? Yeah, I think it depends on the customer, right? And their culture, right? And I think that you, as the CEO of the company, as I go around and meet customers, I've got to decide, which are the customers that are going to treat us fairly, because ultimately the customer does have to have a sense of what's fair, right? And there does have to be let's call it, it's never a win-win, right? I don't think I'm not short-sighted enough to think that the customer is going to win every time and we're going to somewhat lose. But it's the customers that really look down their nose at their vendors and don't seek to find fairness in anything, whether it be over ordering of materials based on a forecast that changed, whether it be pricing that was quoted incorrectly originally, and how can we work back to what's fair. I believe that there are customers out there that see us as a extension of themselves, as an extension of their own supply chain, and they want it to be healthy and strong. And I think that there are customers out there that see us as a vendor and see us as those guys, and aren't interested in us being healthy necessarily, just interested in us delivering them the absolute lowest price we can, with the best quality level on time. So I'm cognizant of that, and I am aware of that. And I am in these first 100 days and now beyond the first year, I'm looking hard at the customer base and saying, which ones are the right ones and which ones aren't. And then those are the ones, that's how we're going to show up in the marketplace as it relates to them. And then other customers, bringing customers in that I've done business with successfully at other companies, that's obvious, right? Because I think over time you develop a relationship with people, and if you deliver for people and they trust you, then they're going to tend to want to give you another chance. And that's where loyalty, that's where loyalty, I think, can be very personal too, not just a company, but between people. And so, I think most of the customers I've done business with over my 40-year career look at me as a guy that tells the truth, that states the facts, that doesn't BS around, and that gets things done. So hopefully I can bring in a few of my ex-customers in my past that will kind of round out the customer base at this company over time.
Good. The other issue I want to touch on is, you've mentioned a few times the culture piece. So what is that kind of vision or culture for IMI that you hope to instill moving forward?
Yeah, I have all these little acronyms that I like to work with, right? Team is, engagement, attitude, and mentoring, making things happen. I really believe in attitude for every single person. they have to show up with the right attitude. They have to show up with a can-do attitude. They have to show up with, I can get this done. I'm going to die trying. And they have to show up with, kindness and support for the other people on their team. So if someone isn't delivering, someone isn't getting the job done, then to go over and figure out why, right? Don't talk behind their back. Go engage them directly. And I lead that way, right? So when it comes to my own team, I'm never going to raise my voice. I'm never going to disrespect a single person at the company ever. And that's really, really important, that there be a respect up and down the organization for each other, and that everybody works their can off and knows that they're important. Them getting their job done is important. And then the leadership styles for each person and their team, right? It's about them being sure that they're helping the people on their team that are working for them. They're there to support them, not to drive them into the ground. And so I think there's, in Asia, sometimes that can be misunderstood. Sometimes managers and leaders, I think this is true everywhere, probably. They tend to let the power go to their head a little bit, and they think that they're the ruler and they're the boss and they're always right. So where they have to open up and they have to make sure that their team's really comfortable with critiquing them and challenging them. So I'm kind of going on and on here, but
No, I
I think,
appreciate that.
the last thing I'll say is the sales side. I'm a believer in challenger selling. I'm not sure you're aware of that, but it's kind of the latest strategy for successful selling. And I think moving from a relationship sale to a challenger sale is what I'm trying to do with this organization, so that everybody understands on the commercial side of the business how to be a challenger with our customers. That's the other thing that within this first 6 months that I'm trying to make sure I implement.
Yeah. So you joined IMI at a very interesting and challenging time in the industry, right? Most revenues for most EMS this year are down, right? Inventory
Yep.
levels are still probably too high, and they are trending
Yes.
down, but probably still too high. There's workforce challenges reported in all regions, right? That's an ongoing piece. Still have high interest rates, all of these things. So a great time to take over there, Louie. That's but uh, so
Yeah.
how do you view these? And some of these are these challenges that are short term, or are these just kind of part of the fabric of the industry moving forward that just have to be managed continually?
I think they're part of the fabric of the industry that have to be managed. I think that stuff's always going on. There's always challenges, right? And I believe that the better managed, the better led, the better organized the company is, the better they succeed through challenges versus their competition. Because everything in this, Eric, is about how do I do relative to all the people I'm competing with. So we're all going to go through a challenge. How do we go through that challenge? How do we succeed by being on top of the pack? But in terms of managing inventory in a environment where the end customer is rationalizing their inventory, right? Coming out of COVID, I think over the last year and a half, a lot of customers have said, okay, we're going to reduce inventory levels now that we're safe, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's been a real struggle for a lot of the EMS players because, everything rolls downhill and we're the plumbers, right? So we've got to make sure that we do the plumbing and that we manage things quickly and efficiently as it relates to supply. And those that don't, those that aren't flat enough and efficient enough, those that don't get the message through to the suppliers fast enough, they suffer and they lose, right? So, and I think as far as revenues go, you gotta be fluid with overhead, right? So you have to be able to respond quickly to demand changes in your organization so that overhead can be more variable and less fixed, right?
Mhm.
So,
Right.
and those are things that any good management team will understand and be able to manage through. So I think this is, if it's not one thing, it's another, Eric. So
Mhm.
right now it's just another pile of challenges that come up. And it's the reason why a lot of these OEMs don't want to manufacture themselves, right? It's the reason why the EMS industry exists,
Yeah.
is because we're supposed to do this better. We're supposed to be 100% focused on this, right? Like
Mhm.
I have a lot of mantras, right? I think I see a lot of the EMS players trying to get into product design and technology, right? And I think, that's some of what IMI started to get into with the acquisitions of late of STI and VIA, right? And I think that that is a very different world than is the EMS world, right?
Mhm.
So if you're trying to be all things, at least from a senior level management perspective, it gets confusing because it's a very different set of skills to be a great EMS company, a great manufacturer, than it is to be a great designer and
Mhm.
technology company, right? So yeah, so we're an EMS company through and through, and we're not changing that,
Yeah.
and we're doubling down on that.
Yeah.
So
So, as a global EMS company, and you talked about at the very beginning that the globalization versus regionalization kind of issue, and it seems like globalization, as we've known it at least, it has ended, right? And we're moving into these kind of, for various reasons, into kind of more regionalized supply chains. America, Southeast Asia, Europe, China will always be its own, right? And all these,
yes.
but how do you see this issue, and how does that impact your strategy moving forward?
Yeah, another great question. I would tell you that you're right, and I think a lot of it is economics, right? I think, look at shipping and logistics costs. They went way up during COVID to astronomical levels. A container, if you look at the Shanghai Container Index, and I monitor that constantly, that was up at $10,000 for a Shanghai to Long Beach container. And guess what? It went way down last year. And people started to think, oh, okay, well, maybe we go back to, built in Asia and shipped to the US or Europe. What happens this year? We're back up to $8,000, right?
Yeah.
So container costs, shipping costs have skyrocketed in the last 6 months. So I think it teaches us all the lesson that supply chains uh, are, I think, better when they're shorter.
Yeah.
You can respond much faster, because the other thing that I believe, Eric, that's happening in the industry is it's harder to predict what will sell, how much of it will sell. And so being really flexible when it comes to supply chain means that you need your supply chain to be short, right? So that you can increase supply, you can decrease supply quickly when
Mhm.
it comes to your finished goods. Now, I do think that a lot of the components are still coming from Asia. So, if I'm building in Mexico, I'm still buying, 70% of my components from Asia. More and more customers are demanding that it not be China, that it be somewhere outside of China. They want to see a supply chain, at least an option for a supply chain that has no China content at all. And
Mhm.
in some cases, no China Taiwan content.
Mhm.
So, we're asked to do that on occasion. So I really believe that regionalization makes sense for customers to be local,
Mhm.
to have that shorter supply chain, but to be able to manage cost by being able to source globally. And then you deal with the supply chain as it relates to cost. The most expensive long lead time item is the thing you need to pay the most attention to, and then you've got a lot of the mechanicals which by the way, you know, the mechanicals tend to be 70% of the number of components in a BOM, or electrical might be 30% of the number of components, but electrical is 80% of the cost in the BOM, right? Even though it's 30% of the components, the number of components. So it's managing those long lead time, expensive components to be sure when demand changes up and down quickly that you can match and meet that. And I'll tell you that one last thing I'll say is all of the Western IC companies that are out there with these crazy 1 and 2 year NCNR terms, you know, no cancel, no change clauses and contracts, and then they're forcing those components down our throats. I'm telling you that they are opening. This reminds me of the 1990s for box build product in the US when I was doing it. We had a cavalier approach to the customer. We would tell the customer no, right? And guess what? China was telling the customer yes, yes, yes. And guess where all the business went? To China.
Listen, you've been very generous with your time, so I do better wrap up. Plus, you're on the side of the road, and CHP will be there shortly.
Yeah. Thank you for you know, taking the time to talk to me.
Oh no, absolutely.
Great.
But listen, before I let you go, there is there anything else about IMI, the industry, that you haven't been able to speak to that you would like to make any comments on?
I've said a lot. I mean, I think that the biggest thing is, if any IMIer is listening to this, and I hope that they will, that they know in their hearts and their minds how great this company is, and how much better it's going to get over the next six to 12 months. I care, and the depth of concern that I have for the people of this company, for the customers of the company, can't be measured. I don't do things. I only have one gear, Eric, and I work my can off, and there's no replacement for that. And so I want them all to know that, you know, things are going to be brighter. Things are getting brighter every day. And it's because of them that they will get brighter. They will get better. And the same message goes out to our customers, that you matter, and that we're going to do a great job on your behalf. And we're excited to be engaged with you and have the opportunities to deliver for you. So yeah, that's my parting message.
That's a great message. That really is. Well, listen, it has been a pleasure. I think this has been my first opportunity. I think you're the right man at the right time in the right place there. And that's,
thank you, Eric.
I wish you nothing but success, and I hope we get to speak again in the future and get to revisit some of these topics, and, you know, let you, you know, celebrate some of the successes.
I'm counting on that, Eric.
Good. Well, listen, again, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. And you have a great day.
Bye, Eric. See ya.
Thank you.